Hello! In this video, we will look at how to protect specific data ranges in Google Sheets. What is the overall purpose of protecting specific ranges of data? Let's take a look at two examples. The first example is the most typical case, common when interacting with a table where you have columns to enter data that you need to fill in and, for example, you have columns with formulas, especially if we're talking about array formulas that work for the entire range. These formulas are very easy to break, and if someone carelessly enters some values, it will break the whole formula. For those cases, to protect our ranges from outside tampering, so that only system administrators and those who customize their formulas can edit, we need protections for certain ranges. Also, the second case where this can be used is, for example, some categories or customizations that are related to drop-down lists and so on. Accordingly, if you don't want to protect entire sheets from being edited, but only want to keep the protection of a certain range, we will use data protection of certain ranges. Let me remind you that in order to share the table, we can choose several access options. Thus, we can choose access for viewing, for commenting, and for editing. Accordingly, when you select Editor, the person for whom you put this permission can edit the whole table. But when you protect the ranges, you will be able to further delimit the access data. So, how do we protect a range, a column, or a row, or even a single cell? To do this, we select More Column Actions and select Protect Range. After that, we go to Settings. Here we can add a name to explain to our data protection, and next we choose Set Permissions. We have two options here, either completely close from editing, or we can show a warning when editing the data. So for example, if we're working with formulas that we need to make sure that they stay in a consistent value and don't break, I recommend choosing Full Protection. And in other cases as well. But also in some cases, if you trust your users and you know that they're not going to break anything, but they need to get some kind of warning for a certain range of data, and that range of data, for example, is not based on formulas, but just on some categories of data and so on, then you can choose to show a warning. How does it work? We are now logging in from another account, and when you select Show Warning, the user, when trying to enter data, will get this warning, which he can remove and decide whether he cancels the data entry or saves it and the changes he made. In this case, we're going to cancel the input now, and therefore we're not going to have any changes in the data. But let's look at how we can make sure that we create a scope rule so that no one can edit it, for example, except you or certain individuals. We go through the same steps, and then we can either choose to allow only us to be able to make changes if we are the only system administrators and we need to keep access for us. Or we can customize the accesses and choose who can edit the range. In this case, if we remove the selection now, then we are left with us only editing. How will that look from the perspective of someone who is not in this range under the role of someone who can edit? When we log in from another account, when we try to enter data, we'll get an error saying that we can't make changes. I want to say a couple of additional things about the fact that when you put this protection on the whole data range, then in this case, the person can't even move this column and can't put a filter on the data range if this column is there. In order to not interfere with people's work and, for example, so that filters can be added, I recommend that all the columns that you put under protection be moved somewhere either to the far right row or to the far left. And that way, when trying to add a filter, the person will have that option because it won't snag our column that's already protected from editing. And lastly, if you want to not only hide it from editing, but in general, so that this column, which is responsible for formulas and is needed, for example, for further analytics, is not shown and nothing can be done to it. You can also hide it from view, and then users will not be able to open it at all and will not be able to expand this column. Users will still be able to add filters and fill in the rest of the data, but without harming your formulas and without harming the range, which cannot be edited. All in all, these are all the main points we can consider in protecting our ranges. That's all for today. Give it a like if you enjoyed the video. If you still have any questions, ask them in the comments.